Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Animation Pilgrimage, where we take a look at every theatrically released animated film in chronological order. I am Tennille.
And I am Sean.
And this week on Animation Pilgrimage, we have Hansel and Gretel, an opera fantasy.
I'm sorry you pronounced that incorrectly. It's Hansel and Gretel. According to this film, it is Gretel.
Yeah, sure, I guess. I mean, maybe that's how you actually say it.
But I've always heard it Gretel, honestly.
Same. So I don't know.
Might just be us dumb Americans, though.
I don't know what to think anymore.
This was... Who is this by?
Well, okay. So, this was directed by John Paul, who I could not find any information on.
Okay.
Produced by Michael Meyerberg, who I could not find any information on.
Okay.
And then, Evalid Javaskis began working for Meyerberg Productions to conceptualize the look for this film and design the miniature sets, who I also could not find any information on. And then it was released in New York in October, and then RKO Pictures saw it, and they're like, hey, cool, we'll distribute this for a Christmas release.
Okay.
So then they sort of bought the rights to it and then distributed it for the Christmas time. And then I think a few years after that, when television was really starting to catch on, RKO would then release it as a Christmas special every year. And it became a bit of a Christmas tradition to watch. So I see on the internet, although this is definitely one that I've never heard of.
Same. I'm guessing this also didn't continue once certain other
Stop motion
Christmas specials that were actually about Christmas showed up and became insanely popular for some reason.
That would be my guess.
So, this is obviously the tale of Hansel and Gretel, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's a pretty simple story.
Yeah.
Boy and girl, brother and sister either get lost in the woods or get banished to the woods by parents. It's different every single time.
The setup usually changes.
The setup changes a little bit, but the main gists are the same. This particular one was the kids were goofing off, so mom sent them into the woods to pick strawberries, and then they got lost because of a witch, and then they end up at the witch's house, which is made of candy because she likes to eat children who are fat and plump, so she bewitches them into staying there to eat the candy to get fat so that she can cook them, and then they shove her in the oven, killing her, and they go home happily ever after. There's some tiny differences here and there depending on the version, but that's the general gist of all Hansel and Gretel stories.
It's a really, really simple fairy tale.
So, how long do you think this movie was? You know, you'd probably think this would be like a good 45 minutes if you stretch it out, right? Right?
You would hope.
How long was this, Tennille?
It was 70 minutes?
It was 71 minutes.
Yeah.
This film was over an hour long. It felt like 7 hours.
It was really long. So the opera fantasy part of this
Title
is actually from an opera.
I suspected. It's like this, because it's just a straight opera, which means there's a lot of extended, pointless songs every 2 seconds.
I think a lot of dialogue was added to this film, and I think some of the songs were changed or some were removed and all that. But yeah, the film is based on Engelbert Humperdinck's opera Hansel and Gretel.
So is that like a German, Polish? Who knows?
I don't know.
Some European
Yeah.
opera. Because, yeah, there's a lot of just straight opera bits.
Whoever it is, they're way more well known than this film because they actually have Wikipedia articles about them, unlike everybody else who is associated with this film.
Well, I mean, they wrote operas, so of course they're going to be more well known and categorized than some random small-time stop-motion film, I guess.
The only people involved in this film that I could really find any information on is one of the writers, a couple of the actors, which most of them just did like some small parts in daytime TV and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And the music conductor, who then a few years after this conducted the music in My Fair Lady.
Oh, okay, so good for them.
Yeah.
One interesting thing I saw in the credits, which, I mean, makes perfect sense to me, is that both Hansel and Gretel were played by the same lady.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because you need a child actor who can sing, so very often you will hire a woman who can,
do a girl and a boy voice.
Do little girl and little boy voices and also be able to sing.
Yeah. So anyway, more about this movie. It's stop motion animated. The one thing I was impressed with, and I tried to do some research on how these puppets were made, because these are definitely different puppets than the last few stop motion animated films that we've seen.
Yeah, these were American-made stop motion puppets, which means they had facial movement.
Well, I mean, American doesn't really have anything to do with it, but the way they were built is different than like the socket kind of limbs and the one facial feature that Juri Trenka, who we just saw, the Czech year, or old Czech legends.
Yeah, man, we're doing like a bunch of stop motion here.
Yeah, it's kind of nice because now we get to like compare and contrast. Well, and stop motion up to this point has already kind of had a little bit of a rich history that we don't get to see because they haven't been purely all animated films.
Yeah, it's a lot of like live action with stop motion. Things that, I mean, we might go back and look at some point maybe? I don't know.
Maybe do like a special on like old stop motion stuff.
Early stop motion, because like King Kong.
Right.
And like those like old people on a dinosaur island thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like really hilariously bad animated dinosaurs fighting each other and stuff. It's like, it's super memorable, like, imagery. It's just, we've missed a lot of that because not a whole lot of it was like feature-length films, and that would count exclusively as animation and stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, none of that really has anything to do with this film, but I did find the technique, the best I could find explaining the technique for how these puppets were made is it is a clay base.
Okay.
With like a foam plasticky coating on top that they can then move, which is why the characters can move pretty realistically. Like, the animation itself isn't that great, but I think had this been in the hands of some better animators, they could have gotten some really interesting expression and stuff out of these puppets.
Especially the witch. The witch seemed to have the best facial animation, but also the worst because the face could move more.
Right.
There was a couple of points where like a whole section of her face around like an eye would like jump up a bit and then come back down a few frames later, and it's really disconcerting.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if some of these animators had met some of the Disney animators, or Warner Brothers animators, I'm sure even at this point, they could have told these stop motion artists, hey, something we've found when we do traditional animation is that if you move around the skull, it looks really creepy. So really make sure that you have a nice solid cranium and only move the jawline and the eyebrows as far as squash and stretch goes on your faces, because if you squish the cranium, it creeps people out.
Yeah, it really does. It's creepy. So I guess one plot twist with this version of Hansel and Gretel is it's a Christian film. It's a religious film, because there's this guy that I guess is the Sandman or an angel. I'm not sure, but he sings a piece and then, like, sends the children to sleep, and then they have visions of actual angels coming down to them and, like, protecting them while they sleep and stuff.
And at first I thought this was just completely pointless, like just a complete aside, and it mostly is. But it does kind of tie into the end of the film where
they save a bunch of other children?
They save all the other children that the witch has eaten?
I don't know. Like, they say in this version that she cooks the children into gingerbread, and then she eats the gingerbread children. But if this is true, there's like 6 gingerbread children there already. Why has she not eaten them?
Is it just a metaphor? I don't understand.
We don't know, but...
Is it just symbolism that's not good?
No, because the bear and the goose don't get it, and they start eating the witch when she turns into a gingerbread.
The bear and the goose were completely pointless characters.
They have like friend bear cub and goose, which I can only...
I was like, oh, it's Mother Goose and Little Bear. Like Little Bear from the... Did you ever watch that show? Little Bear? Yeah, with the little brown bear.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about that in a while.
Yeah, that's immediately what it made me think of.
But they just kind of exist. I'm wondering if they're here because Disney has animal friends for all their main characters.
There was a lot of
we want to be Disney
references here. Yeah, specifically Snow White. I didn't see so much taking from Cinderella, which, I mean, if this is a stop motion film only made a few years after the release of Cinderella,
there's a good chance that it was too late for them to get influenced by that.
But there is a ton of Snow White influence in here. And I don't just blame them for it, because it's like, at this point, that's probably one of the few successful fairy tale animated films that's been released. Yeah. So why wouldn't you take from that?
Like The Witch. The Witch looks very similar to the witch from...
Yeah, the hag form in Snow White. And there's like a scene where the kids are scared and they see faces in the trees, and and Gretel even like falls and starts crying. And then it's just kind of awkward because it's obviously very Snow White, and then her brother is just there like patting her on the head and like,
it's okay,
don't cry.
And at one point, like, the furniture comes to life and dances with them at the beginning.
In general, the whole look of the film feels very similar to, or at least inspired by the same kind of art that made Snow White.
Yeah, it's very, very clear. And then you're just filled with a lot of opera.
There's a lot of singing, and the audio quality on this was really, really bad, and it was really hard
to understand
anything that was going on.
Because I gotta say, I haven't really listened to a whole lot of opera before this.
Yeah.
And then add low audio quality on top of people doing the belting, warbling thing that's just what you do in opera. It made it impossible to understand anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first to say I don't understand opera, but I do understand film. And there is a lot of pointless songs in this.
Yeah,
a lot of characters just standing around and singing for no good reason.
They're singing at you, which makes more sense if you're actually at a theater where you can't really show all of these things. Mm-hmm. But this is a movie where you can show all these things instead of just telling us. It's the concept of show don't tell.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of like people don't really like operas or musicals in general.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's either a kind of love it or you hate it. Mm-hmm. Do you like people singing at you or don't you?
Yeah, there's not a lot of in between there.
Yeah.
It's like, and I would say I'm generally okay with most musicals, but this was just too much.
I would say that I am in the camp of I prefer my songs to have a purpose.
Yes.
And I love music. I love being sang at, but I also like it to have meaning.
You like to have good storytelling more.
Right. Exactly.
It is the thing.
A song could, like, musically suck, but if it told a powerful story, I'd be more likely to like it than a song that is beautifully written and beautifully sung,
but it has absolutely no point.
But has a hollow meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, we need to go that way, and then they sing a song for 10 minutes about how they need to go that way, and then they, after singing the song, actually go that way. And then the scene cuts. Mm-hmm. But they're just standing around singing for like 10 minutes. And like, there's never something like that specifically in this, but like, there's one scene where it's like, I need to tell you a story about where our children went, and the husband's like, no, let me sing you a song about where the children went. Yeah, there's
worst song.
Base misogyny across this entire film.
Yeah, it's very 50s.
Uh-huh.
In general, and like the way, there's a couple of lines, Hansel has towards Gretel too, that I'm just like, ugh.
Ugh. Boys don't wear flowers.
Yeah, Gretel makes Hansel a cute little flower crown, puts it on his head, and he's like, boys don't wear flowers. And so he puts it on her, and it's supposed to be like, oh, it's sweet. He's putting a flower crown on her, but it's like,
no, she made that for you.
Please.
Get over yourself.
She made that for you, so you putting it on her head isn't sweet.
I just want to point out, like, right around the same point, they're singing some cuckoo song while just inhaling strawberries. Like, they ate these strawberries. No, you're like, that was too slow. It's more like, hum, 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 hum. You're just like, holy crap, kids.
Calm down.
You act like you haven't eaten in weeks.
Yeah, I mean... Well, okay. Let's talk about pacing, too.
Okay, yeah, pacing. How soon do you think you should get to the witch's hut in a story about Hansel and Gretel? You know, probably like a third of the way in, maybe halfway, right? Yeah? How about 45 minutes into this film? That's an hour and 10 minutes long. That's how long it takes us to get to the witch's house.
And trust me, it's not like they're developing the characters or anything like that beforehand.
Nope.
It's just a lot of boring filler before you get to the witch's house.
Uh-huh. They're lost in the woods.
They sing a song.
They sing a song. They're still lost in the woods. They sing a song.
Before they go get lost in the woods, they sing like 5 songs.
Yeah, like sing 2 or 3 songs that chain into each other, and then the mom sings a song, and then the father shows up and sings 2 songs in a row, and then the witch gets like a song, and it's just, so
and then there's the
much.
whole dream sequence, and then
then
it still takes like forever, and they finally get to the witch's house, and they never, like,
They
even
never really
then,
go
they
in
stand outside the witch's house. They're never they're inside it, like, for a scene.
Like a tiny scene where there's a striptease.
Oh, yeah,
There's just like a few frame
that.
striptease of the witch.
Yeah, the witch is like pulling down her dress thing, and she totally like turns her back at the audiences, like wink wink. Oh, like, ugh.
And I mean, it was supposed to make you go, ugh. Because she's ugly, but she's also like, the witch was just like one of those comical villains where you just sit there and you're supposed to laugh at them. But I never laughed.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the few films we've had so far
where I just didn't like anything about it.
Well, that, and I also just feel like this is aimed at really, really young children. And if you're any older than that, you're not going to get much enjoyment out of it, except for, like, nostalgia.
Yeah, it's
if
like
you grew up with it for
every
whatever
other film
reason.
we've watched so far, there's been something interesting. Even if the story's boring, the animation's been awesome to look at, or...
My only other exception, I think, would be, like, Johnny the Giant Killer.
Yeah.
Would kind of fit in this category, too.
But that was... Yeah, it was also just kind of, like, baffling.
Yeah, that one
It's just
was, like, interestingly
whoa.
bad.
Yeah, this one is just, like, I wish to, like, tear my ears and eyes out.
It's like, can I please be doing anything else?
Can I just go do, like, taxes for other people? Type of thing.
That would be more interesting than watching this film.
Just...
Oh gosh, and can we talk about that whole scene? Okay, it takes forever for the children to get to the witch's gingerbread house. And you would think something exciting would be happening here. But then it just gets frustratingly bad because the witch immediately comes out and ties the boy up with a rope.
A magic rope.
A magic rope that ties him up. And then...
They're just like...
Wait. And then she's like, oh, you should come inside. I've got candy. And it's like, no, wait, witch, you did this out of order.
You already messed up.
You done goofed.
And then she's like, like, constantly through this entire scene, then she's like, come inside, just play along, it's fine. I'm going to eat you.
Right.
Like, constantly, the whole time, to the kids' faces. And I'm guessing a lot of the issues that we have with a lot of the storytelling and pacing in this is because they lifted too heavily from the original opera, where this kind of thing, where just standing around telling the story makes more sense. Instead of
adapting it to a visual medium.
Adapting it to do anything interesting, because just watching a couple of puppets stand there and like awkwardly move and sing at you for an hour and 11 minutes is not interesting.
Yeah, because it's like these puppets have nothing interesting to interact with. There's some really nice sets that were built for this movie, but they're underutilized because...
They don't interact with any of it.
Yeah, because the puppets don't have a chance to interact with it. Instead, they're sticking or we presume that they're sticking too close to this opera, and they're just standing around and singing, when there's, like, these really nice sets that they could be interacting with.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some sad news about the sets and the puppets.
I'm assuming they don't exist?
Well,
the way you say that?
Yeah. The whole story of this film is just kind of sad to me, because obviously this took a lot of time to make.
Yeah, I mean, it's stop motion. A stop motion film or like traditionally animated film take a lot of time, which is usually why even the bad ones have something interesting to look at in them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's the difference between like an animated film versus a live action film. Anyone can make a bad live action film. It takes a very special set of someones to make a bad, like, traditionally animated or like stop motion film.
Right, because like
it's really hard.
There's a lot of artistry here. It's just, it doesn't all come together to make something that's great. It's just bleh. And that's what makes me really sad, is you hate to see that much time, that much effort, that much talent go into a product that's not great.
Yeah.
But anyway, this says that after production, the Hansel and Gretel sets were cut up, carted away, and eventually sold to an amusement park where they were poorly reconstructed in a tent for display. In 1955, 1 year later, vandals looted the studio and destroyed the remaining puppets, which the puppets were called Kinnemans? K-I-N...
Kinnemans?
Kinnemans? I just assume it's like like cinema.
Oh, but it's got a K.
Well, because you can spell cinema with a K sometimes, I think.
No. That seems wrong. I don't know. I'm sure you've probably put this word on screen.
Yeah, I'll put it up on screen. I don't know why they coined this word for these puppets in particular.
That's strange.
But yeah.
Well, that's depressing.
Yeah.
This film wasn't great, and then to find out that people just, like vandals, just destroyed everything just makes it worse.
And another thing, one of the comments you made during the movies, you said that you can tell that everything's really small.
Yeah?
You're actually wrong. Everything was a third to real life size.
Whoa, that's a lot bigger than I expected.
And the sets were so big that they had to, all the sets that were like houses, they had to make trap doors under all the houses because there was no way to move the puppets
Inside.
So they had to move them from underneath to animate them.
Crazy. Okay, that's even way too much more effort.
Which also explains probably why a lot of the sets then are the outdoors.
Because you can do things outdoors much easier if you built entire houses. Oh dear.
Yeah.
This is an interesting, sad film.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything else to really talk about with this one?
No. I guess there is one other interesting thing to say is that this is the first American-made animated film in America that's not done by Disney since Mr. Bug Goes to Town or Hoppity Goes to Town or whatever it is you want to call it.
That other Fleischer Bros movie.
Yeah.
And how much time was between those two? Was it like 10 years? Or nearly?
A little over 10 years. Cause Hoppity Goes to Town was 1941.
41. I was thinking 43. Wow, 12 years of Disney ruling.
Of just Disney.
And I mean, this film did not...
yeah, but I mean...
did not deter that.
You also got to keep in mind that for a lot of people, cartoons were still very... a lot more popular as a short form.
Yeah.
Rather than as a film, because
full-length film
just
is not picked up on yet.
Very expensive to do, and only Disney could do it.
Well, okay then.
Yeah.
So, would you recommend this film to anybody?
No.
No. Yeah, it's like, unlike the last film that we watched, which was stop motion, we suggested you watch that one just because it's
gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, and if
and
you
done by a pioneer of stop motion animation.
Oh yeah, and it's like that one was gorgeous. This one, I don't really feel like it adds a whole lot to the history of stop motion animation.
No, it's
other
not a
than
hidden
exists.
gem. It's just kind of like, it's there. It's really sad that a lot of talent and time and effort went into this, and it's just...
essentially got wasted. Well, at least everybody got paid, right? Hopefully.
I mean, hopefully. I didn't see any, like, big controversy or anything when I was researching it, so...
So, at least they got paid for making this.
Probably.
We could assume, hopefully.
Yeah. So anyway, next should be an interesting one that I know a few of you guys have been waiting for.
Okay.
We have Animal Farm.
Oh, a American and British cooperative film.
Mm-hmm. So, see you guys then.
I've made a wreath. I never had such nice flowers and leaves before. Here's your reward.
That doesn't go on a boy's head. Wreath's only for girls. Here,